Hello,
right.
hello, everyone. Welcome to
Hello.
another Langflow live stream. We're going to give everybody a few minutes just to trickle in. I know you might be busy clicking the links or coming from our Discord, coming from LinkedIn, wherever you are tuning in. So we'll give you a few seconds to get in. While you are coming in, feel free to drop in the chat where you are tuning in from. It's my favorite question because I love to see
Yeah.
where everybody's watching us from. So, I'll start. I'm here in the Bay Area, California. If there's any other Bay Area people in the chat, shout out to the Bay Area.
You know what's kind of funny about that, Melissa, is being that I used to live in Los Angeles in the
Yeah.
South Bay area.
Oh,
When
that's right.
someone says Bay Area, California, my mind immediately goes there instead of San
Oh,
SF. Yeah.
right. Sorry, NorCal, Bay Area.
Get it right.
For
Come on.
clarification. Sorry. How about you, David? Where are you tuning in from?
I am tuning in from Orlando, Florida.
There we go.
Obviously, the tourist vacation capital of the world.
Oh, I didn't know that.
No, I'm just being half funny. I mean, it is. Yeah, I mean, there is an absolute ton of tourism here for. I mean,
For
obviously, people
sure.
familiar with Disney. There's a lot
Yeah.
in Universal. There's a lot of other things to do here, but I'm not going to do a pitch for Orlando at the moment. But
Everybody go to Orlando and find David.
right, right. Oh wow,
Cool.
I'm seeing we have lots of Finland. Hi there, Dennis from Finland. I'm only pointing out Finland because I've traveled to Finland a bunch, and I have very close Finnish friends, and I love that country. Um,
Nice.
Yeah, it's very cool.
Yeah.
Beautiful place where the summer is 55 degrees.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Which was wonderful for me. But anyway.
Oh, yeah. Floridians, I know. They like to go where it's a little bit colder. All right. Oh, hi, Lagash. Lagash. Nice to see you again, tuning in. We got folks from India, folks from San
Yeah.
Jose. Cool. Local. Finland. Oh, yep. Finland again. Germany. Great. Awesome.
Oh
Okay. It
yeah, I
looks
gotta go to
like,
the sauna and have some sausages. That's right.
oh,
That's
it,
awesome.
we got to meet up one time, Dennis. All right. Awesome. So we see we're getting more people in the chat. Amazing. Thank you again and welcome to another live stream hosted by your friendly Langflow Devrel over here. I'll kick off with some introductions. My name is Melissa. Again, I'm a developer relations engineer based here in Bay Area, focused on generative AI and Langflow. I'll pass it over quickly to David.
Yeah, and I am David Jones Gilardi, also a developer relations engineer here at Langflow and a Genea nerd. I've been coding for many years. And now I'm into love vibe coding. We're not going to do vibe coding today, but that's a whole different thing. And all the fun with AI, generative AI, and agentic AI.
For sure, definitely. Vibe coding would for sure be a really fun live stream to do the
If
next
we
time.
do a vibe coding live stream, if you guys give us some emojis or talk about the just talk about it in the chat or something if you're interested in that. Actually, I'm going to put a poll in. I'll put a poll in for that one.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a great segue, David, because we have a ton of features here in SQL. If you're just tuning in for the first time, I wanted to share some housekeeping rules for those who are tuning in for the first time for our returners. So number one, this whole session is being recorded. So if you came in late, if you missed it totally, don't worry. If you missed it, then you're not here. But if you missed it totally, then you will be getting this live stream sent to you. The recording will be shared with a bunch of other resources that we will be giving you today. A next thing is that you're already seeing it, the chat feature. Is one, we want this to be a bit fairly interactive. So throughout the whole session, if you have things and comments to share, little tidbits, share it in the chat. But the next thing is the Q&A tab. So if you have questions that you would like us to answer on stream, then use that Q&A tab on the right of your screen to share your questions there. We can display it on the screen and actually answer them live, or just we'll be keeping an eye out throughout the whole session. So the chat feature, the Q&A feature, David might drop a poll or two throughout the live stream as well. So feel free to answer those. And this session will be recorded, so you will get that after the end of this session.
That's right.
All right. Great. So that was all the live stream housekeeping. We're gonna jump into the actual meat of the content today, which is Langflow 1.4 updates. Woo! I'm super excited to talk about this. I love whenever we get new updates with Langflow. Every single time, it's I mean, of course, that's what an update is, right? We're building off of the last one, but it seems like it is definitely getting more and more exciting. So we're going to talk about all the things that got released, some that are more kind of more in experience, some in regards to MCP. If you are familiar with MCP, drop a comment, and we'll just be going over those things today. So I'll kick off. I'm talking a lot, but let me
That's
start
okay. Usually
sharing.
I talk a lot, right? So it's nice for someone else to go ahead and talk.
Yeah. And I know David's sitting at the edge of his seat wanting to talk, so I'm gonna just keep him waiting over there. All right, let me go ahead and share my screen and we'll jump into Langflow itself. So, for those who have used, or actually, let me ask this first. David dropped a poll a little bit
Mhm.
earlier, but I'm gonna ask it again. Who has been either used or drop a comment if you've used Langflow, if you've never used Langflow, or maybe you've used Langflow in the past and you're kind of just getting back into it. Feel free to share your experience right now. I ask because there's so many different things that you can build with Langflow, right? Each of these individual things here, they're called flows. Um, and you can build so many different things. You can build AI agents, you can build RAG pipelines, so many different things. One update that I want to talk about here is let's go into this flow here. So I've built, obviously, this flow is a little bit complex. There's a bunch of different components. And one thing when you are building with Langflow is that whenever there's an update, components update as well. So if I'm going into a flow that I've built maybe on 1.3, for example, now we're on 1.4, there's definitely changes that have come with each of the individual components that might have been thrown in there as well. They also need to be updated. So one thing in the past experience, whenever we have updates, is that it brings up this notification here on the bottom where it'll tell you that there are components that need to be updated. And before I would go in here, I would press update all, and it would update the components for me, or so I think. I would run the flow, and there might be some things that were outdated that I need to update, and it might break the flow, and I don't know kind of what's going on, right, David? I'm sure you've kind of like experienced.
Oh,
I'm sure
sure.
you've experienced that in the past.
Yeah, yeah. No, and I think for us probably quite a bit just because we work with so many Langflow flows. But no, this is the feature that Melissa is just about to show you, like I got all excited about. Because I think anybody who has had some flows out there that they're actively using, right? And then there is like some big upgrade or something like that, especially to individual components. This is I think a really awesome quality of life issue. So
Yes.
let's see it. Let's see it.
And let's talk a little bit about what this flow has real quick, just to kind of and I see your comment there, Vaskin, about the screen being super tiny. So I kind of zoomed in a little bit for you. But in this flow in particular, I have a bunch of components that are connected to an agent. And it might be hard to see, but there's this little yellow border around them that says update available. So pretty much I built this flow pre 1.4, and I'm bringing it into my 1.4 Langflow instance. And now these components in particular, Composio, there's some new updates. So what Langflow is telling me is that I can go and update, I can view all of the components that are in my flow and see what are needed to be updated. And I can also see what could potentially even break the flow if I do choose to update it kind of blindly, right? So once I go ahead and click that review all, you get this pop up here that says update components. And as I mentioned, updated marked as breaking may change an input, an output, or component behavior. So there are some that don't have this breaking update type. So the chat input, if I update this and I go ahead and push that through, then no changes to my flow will be made, or no, nothing will break my flow, right?
Right.
And if you see down here as well, I can also have the option to create a backup of the flow before updating. Again, not a feature that was available before. So this really helps with kind of the process of iterating, right? If you wanted to update your flow before and it and something broke, then you're kind of stuck within
Yeah,
that
you had to do it
flow that
manually,
you're
right?
working
That's
on.
something that I would have done
Yeah.
manually which, adds some friction and stuff in there, right? So this just makes it so I can just like kind of go with it, and let's see what
Yeah,
happens.
for sure. Yeah, versioning control was a thing before where you just kind of had to manually duplicate it, which was always a feature, right? You could always duplicate your flow for backup. But now it does it for you here when you update components. So I can go in and click update components. Those components that were selected, they were updated. And now, cool thing, I'm going to hop back out into this folder. That backup was created for you automatically, right? So I can go in here. This was the original flow without the components that were updated, just so that I have that duplicated. And then I can just continuously iterate through these different ones. So initially I had 12, now I have 8. And I can go in and review each individual one. I can do one at a time, I can do two at a time, however you want to go through this. And a cool thing is actually, let me hop in to these specific components that we're dealing with too. Like for example, right? Let me to kind of put it more into perspective. Composio is a tool that we use a lot. Composio is a kind of application integration platform that connects you to things like external tools, right? Like Gmail or Slack or Google Calendar. So if we are doing a lot of work with them and improving their component every single day. So in this new update, we have a new bundle with Composio, and with the old Composio component, if I were to go ahead and update that, then there are different configurations like my API
Right.
key or actions that I have configured, or even the tool itself that I've configured. So if I were to just update that blindly, then of course you see kind of how that change the two look really different, right? So from
Yeah,
this,
these are significant versions different too. Like this flow of yours is back from what, 1.3, right?
yes.
So we're a major version back. There's a lot that's happened with the Composio components, that kind of deal.
For sure. Yeah. So, I mean, you see here where it's like I put in my API key and then you see the difference in the tool name. And yeah, anyway, so if I were to just do all that for my whole flow, the whole thing breaks. I had no way to kind of really trace that before. And now I do with this breaking changes feature, as David likes to call it. So really helpful for version control, for going through different iterations of your flows and making sure that everything is updated. And of course, David also mentioned quality of life. One last quick thing here is if you have this connected to an application that's deployed somewhere in production, you most likely might have an endpoint, right? So this endpoint just points directly to the flow that you're working with. Um, and if I were to have updated this before or duplicated it without having this breaking changes feature, then I had to make sure that the endpoint name in my details was always updated and pointing to the correct one, especially if I have an application, again, deployed and using this flow in the backend or using it for a particular function. So now, if I were to continuously make these make these backups, then these backups actually they create their own endpoints on their own. So you could see this one says Ops Assistant 2, but it keeps the actual main flow that I have here with the same endpoint name as we've started, so that it's kind of maintaining and updating retroactively, especially if I have this flow deployed in prod. David, do you have anything else to add to the whole endpoint name feature?
No, you just covered that. I think to me, that one right there was actually, I don't know how many of you here have been in a situation, like I've got a lot of production apps that I built on Langflow, and I use those endpoint names a lot because I would rather use a name instead of, this unique flow ID that if I update the flow or something, or if I, copy in a new flow may change, right? So I use those endpoint names a lot. And so before this update, if I were to say, make this, maybe I was going to like version my flow, or if I had some breaking changes that I needed to, address in like a new component or something, well, I'd have to kind of go through this process of like duplicate the flow, do the thing. And then while my production app is running, I would have to like flip the endpoint name, right? It
Yeah.
didn't take too long, but again, added a little friction into this. So I really like I just like the fact that this just pops it. Now, admittedly, am I going to be making that particular change to my production flow? Probably not. I'm probably going to do it in like tester staging first and then promote that up. But it is just a nice thing that kind of automatically handles moving that endpoint name over, because that way I don't potentially run into an issue on my end where maybe I forgot, Like if I
Mhm.
just forgot, oh, I needed to address the endpoint name. Well, now when I make the update, it automatically does it. So
For
I
sure.
just, yeah, it just kind of, again, I think it's a nice quality of life update.
Yeah, yeah, it's just enhancing the developer experience. I think we tend like as developers, we want to kind of make sure that everything is kind of streamlined and now everything is in a specific process. Then it doesn't disrupt our flow. So flow. Every time I say flow, like unironically, that always comes up. So having features like this definitely contributes to that process. And I'm getting a lot of the comments that the flow is really hard to see. I really apologize. So I kind of zoomed in a little bit more, especially on that detail screen here. Walking back a little bit to get there, you click this down bar on the name of your flow, and under edit details, that's where you would see the endpoint name here. So just to point that out, yeah, Polly saying Windows too small. Sorry, I'm really apologize. There's the endpoint name in the details and things like that. And again, for those who were saying that it was a bit too small, on the
You
bottom
do
of
that.
the screen here. Oh, there we go. Thank you, David. And on the bottom of the screen here, that's where you'll see all of the updates that are ready for the components that are ready for update once you've updated your Langflow. Thank you, Lagesh. And then review all. There, that's where you'll see which ones will break the components. Sorry, which one will break your flow, which components will not. I can actually go back into a previous one so you can see the difference. So here we are. Here are the components that are standard. So if I update my flow, if I update these specific components, flow will work as intended. If I were to go in and update the ones that say breaking, then there's just a risk that there might be something to look at a bit deeper. We can't just update it, one shot it. So it's just a good way for us as developers to version control well within Langflow and really track all the different changes. Thank you for the thumbs up. Great. Glad I could go over that one more time. So that was a new update there on that front. I know David has a lot of fun things with MCP. So I'll go ahead and pass it over to you, David.
When my what I learned here in a
There
moment is
you
I
are.
think everybody was happier when my face wasn't on the screen. So, so we
I know they
can,
were giving me all the thumbs up.
yeah. All right, let me go ahead and share my screen so we can do some fun stuff. All righty, that is something else fun. As a matter of fact, I'm gonna move y'all. Give me a second as I do the infinite recursion. I hope you enjoy that part. Here we go. All right, so if you could just give me a thumbs up that you can see me and hear me okay, and that the screen looks big enough. I did kind of zoom this stuff in. Awesome. I see some thumbs up coming in. Excellent. All right. So, on top of the, breaking change feature, right, that Melissa just showed, one of the big updates to Langflow 1.4 is the improved support for MCP. So if you're already using Langflow, and I saw earlier when we asked the questions in the polls, by the way, thank you all for answering those. There's a pretty good amount of folks that have used in, MCP. Not everybody though. I'd say more familiar than not. Some not so much. I'll give you just like a quick primer. But if you're using MCP, so Langflow itself is already an MCP server. It already has support for MCP. But Langflow 4 really turns it up a notch and makes it a much, much better experience that we're going to talk about right now. Now, for
Mhm.
those of you I saw, if you're not familiar with MCP, that is Model Context Protocol. It's a protocol that was developed by Anthropic. And the best analogy I've really heard of this, it's like the USB for agentic tool interfaces.
Mm,
So if you just kind of set the scenario, like what Melissa was talking about earlier, let's say with the Composio tools, for example, Composio is like a Zapier for agentic tools, right? They have
yeah.
all these various applications that you connect to through this one interface. But historically, if me as a developer, if I want to interact with all these different tools like, Gmail and Google Maps and EverArt, like I'm going to do today and stuff, I'd have to go learn all their APIs,
Mm,
right? And yes, as all of this agentic AI stuff is really kind of evolved in the last year and a half. And so it started off where you could have tools, you'd have these tool calling models that could call tools, but then you still needed some code somewhere that would work out what that API was. Or maybe you tried to rely on the agent itself to kind of work out the API. And some of them are pretty good. But what MCP does is it, one, homogenizes the interface, right? It makes it universal, but then it also adds this layer of discoverability in there. I actually, just with an app I've been building, an adventure app in MCP, I learned all about this and how there's a whole spec you have to write and everything. But what it does is it means that when an agent goes to discover your tools, it can then naturally discover the tools, the parameters, the inputs, outputs, all the things, right? So MCP, I think, has really changed the game a lot. So if you're not already familiar with it, it's actually pretty easy to get going. And coming back to Langflow, Langflow just implements this as part of its structure. So let's go ahead and take a look. So on the left-hand side here, you're going to see my Langflow. I'm currently at 1.4.2. By the way, for those of you who are on 1.4, if you're doing that and you're upgrading, I highly suggest that you go to 1.4.2. There were some bug fixes that were handled in the .1 and the .2 that I think are really key. So definitely want to get on that one. But one big change you may notice over here is instead of folders, you see projects. So it's not just a structural or organizational difference. What's actually happened is each one of your projects is now its own MCP server, right? So every one of my projects with flows has its own MCP endpoint, and that's going to become really important here in a moment. Melissa, did I hear you for a second? I thought I heard.
Oh no, I was just nodding of approval.
Oh, okay. Okay, awesome. And I do see a let's see, I see a question here. Is there a way to expose a flow as MCP with multiple inputs in Langflow? I'll have to take a look at that one in a second. Yeah, I can't see the whole thing right now, so we'll get back. I'll come back around to that. Okay, so for one, previous version before 1.4, Langflow had MCP support, but if you wanted to interact with it, you would get all of the flows, right? So, you could see that I've got a flow here. I've got like 6 here. I've got a whole set of them. And so what would end up happening is, yeah, here, there's a great one. I get all these. I may not want all of these. So 1.4 gives you direct control over exactly what flow you expose as actions. And on top of now, each individual product is its own MCP endpoint. So let's go ahead and take a look at this, what this actually looks like from a configuration standpoint. So I'm just going to pop this open here real quick. All right, can everybody see that okay, by the way? Resolution good? Zoom?
Yeah, that's a good size.
Okay, good, perfect. Okay, so here's what I want you to notice. I'm gonna play this Wordle game here in a moment, right? There's something very simple and fun that I built in Langflow just to make a Wordle game, right? And you'll notice here in my Wordle game, I have 2 flows, right? I've got this start game flow. This is the one that's responsible for creating whatever the 5-letter word's gonna be. And then I have one that goes through and it evaluates the guesses. So obviously, in a case like this, if I'm going to play the game over an MCP client like Cursor or Claude or whatever, it needs to have access to both of these particular flows. But it also needs to be able to discover what they do. Now, you'll notice when I'm in the MCP server tab, now for when I have this nice endpoint here, right? So I can literally copy this, and I'll show this to you in a moment. I can literally copy this right into Cursor or Claude, and then just go, right? So this will actually give access to this particular flow, again, with its own MCP endpoint. Now, something you might notice, by the way, in the version of Langflow that I'm using, in this Langflow that I have up right now, the one that I have deployed, it is actually deployed with Langflow security layer on, right? So you'll notice that I have this API key. If you did this in a version that does not have that, you won't see this. But this is really nice because I can just come here, I can say generate API key, and injects it right into my config. I can copy that, and now I can connect in an authenticated fashion to Langflow again if I'm using that security mode. And then finally, if you take a look over here, you see this edit actions. So I have both of these clicked on, which means they're both going to get exposed. So let's go ahead and take a look at them real quick. I'm going to minimize this back down, or just move it all the way over. I just apparently to get the right. There we go. Okay. So I'm in Cursor on my left or on my right hand side. This is Cursor. I'm going to come into the config, go to MCP, and I'm going to blow that up just a little bit. It gets a little chunky, but you'll see that I have this Langflow Wordle, right? So notice Langflow Wordle, Langflow Wordle. And if I open it up and let everybody see all my config and all my keys and everything, right, you'll see that this chunk right here, right? This is matching. Obviously, the key is different, but this is going to match what this is. So I can just take this and pop this into my config, and that's all I need, right? And then from there, when I come to, I've already got this one hooked up, but if I were to say refresh and turn that on, you'll see there it went yellow to green, so it just reconnected, and you see it's got access to these guys, right? And if I go into the edit actions, and if I click on one of these, this one's pretty simple, the Wordle Start Game, and if I hover here, right, you'll see pick a random 5-letter word. And then the input and stuff like that. This is stuff that's coming out of the flow, right? It's picking that up. Or if I come down to this one, there's a little bit more in here where I'm giving it an example of, this is important because this then ensures that the upstream client, the MCP agent here, right, and cursor kind of understands, well, what is the input that I expect, right? And again, if I hover over this, you can see it's got that in the information, right? So it's getting this metadata from my MCP tools here. That is what is being exposed here in our upstream clients. Now, in this case, both the flows, I want to use both flows, right? But I mentioned before, one of the cool, updates of this feature is that what happens if I have a case where I have a bunch of flows, maybe Melissa's, I don't want to share all this out, right? No, go ahead.
You could, no worries.
Oh yeah, but I don't want to. No knock to your flows, Melissa, but
right.
But like, so here I now have direct control. I can say, in this case, these are just supporting flows for my particular flow. This is the one I really want to expose, right? Now it gives me that very direct control. So, so I'm not overexposing flows I don't want to. And especially, you'll notice that clients like Cursor, sometimes I don't have all of them on, but if I start turning all these on, it'll start complaining. It'll start saying, hey, like you've got more than 60 tools. Some clients won't do that, right? So again, it allows you to get that nice fine-tuned control.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I think that what you've covered so far, David, might kind of address that question that you started to read earlier from Tails. They're asking, is there a way to expose the flow as MCP with multiple inputs? Because currently they can only add one input component. So I'm assuming like a chat input, which is correct, but resulting in an MCP server with only one tool argument. But with these new changes, you would make each tool would kind of be representative of a flow, is what David is kind of showing here. So you can, I don't actually know, I don't remember, David, if you went into the projects part yet, or maybe you were going into that, but each of these projects that you're creating, and each of the flows within the projects is essentially kind of like a file folder of them. Each of those flows are tools.
Yeah.
So,
and then, yes.
Yeah. So before the 1.4 updates Tails, each flow would kind of have would be its own kind of quote unquote MCP server. So then that your statement would probably be true, right? You would want to make multiple tools, maybe to an agent or something, and then you would only be tied to one specific flow. But now with the new updates that David's showing, multiple flows could be tools to one whole MCP server.
That's right. Here's an example. I happen to have my local Langflow up so you could see this, right? This local is before. So like, again, Langflow itself is its own MCP server. Notice what happened in my local Langflow when I turned on not the connection directly to one of my projects, but just to Langflow itself. I get all of my flows, whether I want them or not, right? And this is, as a matter of fact, this one here, this would be kind of dangerous. My database ops agent, I don't want to share that out, right? Because that actually goes to my real databases that I do things with, so this is how it would be, right? You'd have this one endpoint that would expose all of your flows. The big change here is, yes, while that may exist, now I can pick and choose, right? I can say that for this particular project, I have this endpoint. For this particular project, I have this endpoint. And if you notice, when I change those, you'll see the name and the endpoint and stuff changes, right? So if I go to this, you see Melissa here, I have email agent, right? So it changes the endpoint that you have and gives you that fine control. Is that answering the question?
Yeah, I think I'll let Tails respond.
Okay. And then while that's happening, by the way, Vinolf, I do see a question. Okay, when can we expect 1.4 for Langflow desktop? It should already be there. Matter of fact, I'm going to pull up desktop. I actually have it up. So we do have this capability. You may need to go to the download page and download the 1.4 version if you're on a previous version. If you tried to update and maybe it didn't update for you, I would go to the site and just download the latest. But 1.4 is out for desktop. Okay, so while we're waiting for a response there, what I'm going to do is you could see earlier I was playing Wordle. So again, I have these two flows in here. So now this gives me access to these. Let's make sure I've got this set up right. Yep, here's my Langflow Wordle, and so I'm just going to say, let's start a new Wordle game. Now, something kind of interesting is that when you are interacting, for those of you familiar with MCP, you might already know this. For those of you not, this might be news. But when you're interacting with an MCP tool like we are here with your upstream agents, in this case, I'm using DeepSeek 3.1 with Cursor, you have a neat little interaction because the agent here is actually what is interacting with your tool. And so like all of this kind of stuff, right? If you were to take a look at the start game, let's do that. Let's look at the flow, right? And if you were to take a look at the output, right? So it's this one here, but this is all that my Langflow agent is giving back. That's all it's instructed to do. What's really interesting is that the upstream agent is doing the rest of it, right? And so depending on the agent you use and the client and everything, that you can have a different experience. Let's see. So I'm going to just try one of these, say slate. And now let's see what it does here. You'll see it's calling Wordle evaluate guess. Now again, right, these are the two tools that I have available here. And this upstream agent is determining which one to call based on the metadata, right? It's based on the metadata I have, the name, the description, all of that matters, right? So I'm going to go ahead and run that.
As you're doing that, David, I'm going to see how I could get back on screen. There we are.
There we go. All right, so now now you can see I'm having these interactions, right? And if I go to evaluate guess and I go over here, now again, what's cool, this was the response that I instructed my particular flow to give when it is evaluating something. But what is super interesting about MCP and some of these changes is, again, the upstream agent is taking the information and doing the rest. So if I change between like DeepSeek 3.1 or GPT 4.1 or whatever, it will slightly change the output, right? So it's just a different paradigm now where you have the agent that is also kind of a player in whatever you're doing with these tools, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so and one other thing I want to point out about this, what's super cool about this capability is this kind of configuration now opens up the aperture. We talked about MCP being this universal interface, right? Well, now, yeah, I'm using Cursor here, but I could use, say, Claude Code, or I can use now Warp. For those of you Warp terminal users, if you're familiar with Warp, I love Warp, by the way. I'm like
I've also started using Warp.
Yes, yes. I'm a green, like I'm from like the green screen terminal days, right? And there was a day where I used to know a lot
Showing
more.
Your age, David.
Yes, I know. I used to know a lot more Unix commands than I do now, right? But Warp is amazing, and they have a Warp preview, and they just recently added MCP support to Warp. And then of course Claude, right? Claude Desktop and everything. And you can see I've been playing it in all of these. So it makes it so it is, again, a universal interface that makes it really easy to communicate with any of these particular clients. Mm-hmm. All right, so before I move in, I'm going to do something live here, and we're going to have some fun. We're going to kind of go to the next stage of this, but I want to see, do we have any questions or things we need to address first?
Yeah, so Tails came back and kind of expanded on their question. They said, yes, they know that they can have multiple flows as different tools. That's great. How about for a scenario where they have, for example, they need two inputs, for example, from an email, they want to infer both the subject and the email context. That requires two inputs, like an email sender tool that needs the two arguments inferred by the LLM. For example,
well, I mean, you can have multiple input parameters if that's what you're asking, right? And you can also do that in the metadata that you give back. So like, so if it's like, if you need to ensure that your MCP client, that agent, right, knows that you have multiple input parameters and what those are, you can absolutely set that up. but then I think that's what I think that's the question I'm hearing there. One thing I have learned in doing some of my own MCP work is that the payload that you send back is super important. So if there is extra information that you want to ensure that your upstream client has, that when you send a response from whatever the thing is, right, that you're giving it, you're telling it that. As a matter of fact, that's exactly why here, right, we're saying things like this. We're telling it, hey, what are the,
Mhm.
like, what do you expect? This one's a super simple example, by the way. But this way, that way I know that when the clients are talking, they usually get this right? I don't have to keep telling them, like, if this wasn't there and stuff like that, sometimes, they'll try to discover on their own, but if they don't have like the knowledge of what the expected pattern is, they may get it wrong a couple times. Now, what's cool is the agents usually figure it out, right? That's part of the whole MCP thing. But anyway, again, Tails, I would say if that's not really answering your question, I feel like in your question is maybe a little bit longer of a conversation. This
Mhm.
might be a really good thing to reach out on Discord about.
For sure.
Call us out, and we can sit down and kind of like think about it a little bit more.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That JSON structure. Yeah, Tail. There's different components and ways to handle multiple inputs in Langflow. There's the parser component. Again, we can definitely expand this a bit more, but the parser component, you can accept multiple variables within the prompt variable. There's also the structured output component. So definitely we can explore those different
Yeah.
ways to handle
And
multiple inputs.
oh, okay. And I see you were addressing Ayumbami's question there. Yeah, I would love to know. Yeah, about any obstacles and things. We can talk about those. All right.
Yeah,
So
what
here's
are you running into as a Windows user, Aobami? We'd love to understand.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Any plans to? I see Raymond here. Any plans to incorporate Claude Code as an
Mm,
integrated agent? Integrated how? Because like as it stands right now, I mean Claude. So Claude Code, as I understand, I'm not from the Claude team, but as I understand it, doesn't quite have native MCP support yet. However, funny enough, if you see what I was doing over here, I actually had it create me a script that did that exact thing, and so now I have access to my tools, and then it works great. I actually really like Claude Code. Um, so like you can integrate it this direction, right, where
mhm,
you're talking over MCP to your flows. So when you say an integrated agent, help me understand what you mean by that, if that wasn't it
mm.
right there.
Yeah.
Okay. Alrighty, so here's what I'd like to do now. So, this is like I said, I had the simple Wordle game set up just to kind of illustrate things going on with the MCP. Um, but one of the other areas that kind of comes up sometimes, and what I've seen is a really neat benefit of not only like MCP, but something like Langflow, is sometimes, and by the way, I would love to see your comments and your emojis on this one if you've experienced this. I've totally run into cases. EverArt is a really great example. So EverArt, I do a lot of I do a lot of work with image models and everything. This is actually an example of something I'm working on, right? And I love doing this kind of stuff. I've worked with Stability and DALL-E and now EverArt. And one of the challenges I've run into, though, is that depending on the MCP tool, depending on the upstream agent that you're using, and depending on how well the parameters are defined, they don't always do a perfect job of kind of interpreting what the correct input parameters are. For example, in EverArt, if you take a look, I'm gonna do this live here in a second, but I just want to show you something. In EverArt, they have these definitions for their models that are 5,000 colon flux 1.1, 9,000 colon flux 1.1. Well, it turns out that in the EverArt API, the correct versions of these are 5,000, 9,000, 6,000. So what ends up happening is, for whatever reason, like Anthropic's Claude 3.7 or 3.5 Sonnet, does a very good job of teasing that out and gives exactly the right model name, and it works every time. But if I use like OpenAI's 4.1 or 4.0 or something, it tends to put in the full model name, which is incorrect, right? So is there a way that I can say use Langflow to help me with that kind of thing? Or if I want to set like a default image or something? And
Mhm,
I think this is a really neat use case. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and just start with a basic agent. We're just going to do this live. So if you're curious, like, how do I build an MCP tool here in Langflow, right? And if you haven't used Langflow before or anything, we'll go ahead and do this. Let's blow this up. I don't need this. Okay, I don't need the calculator either, right? So we have a basic agent, excuse me, And I'll pull my
Just think to zoom in a little bit, David.
yes, I'm gonna okay. So I've got a very basic agent here. And now what I want to do is I want to add an MCP tool to this agent, but then I'm going to modify it in such a way that I can tailor the output, the response, and defaults and everything. That way, it ensures that all of my upstream MCP clients essentially get the same experience. And it doesn't matter what model I'm using or anything, they'll get that same thing. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to components. I'm going to grab, I'm just filtering for MCP. I'm going to grab this MCP connection. Now, by the way, this ties into another feature add from 1.4, which is environment variables. So if you were doing this before, and matter of fact, let me go ahead and pull up. We're going to go to model context protocols. I want servers. By the way, if you don't have, I'm just going to drop this for you. If you don't already have this particular GitHub repo, boom, grab that one. That is, I believe, one of Anthropic's actually, but it's model context protocol servers. And it gives this huge list of all these MCP tools, right? And today what I want to do is I want to grab this EverArt one, right? So we're going to do something fun with images and such. And you'll see that I have these commands, right? Like this here, these two mpx-y and whatever. So I'm going to grab this and we're going to come back over to our Langflow fun. Now, the default one is UVX MCP server fetch, but I'm going to do, again, MPX. I'm just literally copying the command. Now, in the previous version of Langflow with MCP support, if you had environment variables, you would have to put all this in one big gnarly string, right? And so not my favorite, right? So what we want to do is I see that I have this need for an EverArt API key. I can just now put that here. I'm going to get a key. Don't you all copy my key now?
Yeah, we're gonna all.
Everyone's gonna take my key.
David's keys.
That's all right. I'm gonna I'm gonna delete it anyway. You know, why not? All right, here we go. Okay, great. So now I can just put this environment variable with this in place. I'm gonna refresh, right? Did I actually do it here? Oh, there we go. I did not actually click the button properly. There we go. And now I have this generate image tool. So it authenticated. To do that, it authenticated. Now I can just turn it into a tool, right? Now I wire it up. Great. Now this agent, my GPT-4.1 agent, has this EverArt tool, right? But like I was just saying a second ago, let's say generate a fun, generate an image of a happy spider. Okay.
What's with you and spiders, David?
Well, I don't know. So, okay. So right now, this is super cool. So this is actually using EverArt's API, right? And you can see what the agent has done. Now it's going to, now check out what happens here, right? Is, well, for one, here's the image. That's cool, right? We have our happy spider, right? And let's see, what model did it ended up using? It went for 5,000. So in this case, it actually went for it. You know, now sometimes if you, it's not, these aren't deterministic. So sometimes you can ask it to do something. Maybe if I say, give me a picture of a house or something like that. Let's say that, let's do that. Generate a picture of a house. And let's see if it uses a different model. Now, something interesting. Yes. Oh, let's see. I want, this is exactly what I wanted. Let's see what it did. Yes. Perfect. So this is what I was talking about before. Notice how, yeah, got it right the first time, but there's nothing in the definition of this particular MCP tool, right, the EverArt one, that actually tells it that it needs to actually just be the number portion. So the model in this case gets it wrong. Now, it's an easy fix. You can literally tell it, hey, ignore that part, right, and do it again, and it'll do it again. But if I am trying to expose this to, say, downstream users of my tool, right, for my flow, I don't want them to have to go through that friction, because how are they going to know that, right? And then they're going to have to, you know, figure this out and go through whatever bugs. So here's where this gets fun. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cheat a little bit, only because I had done this before, but I'm going to bring this into our new guy. Okay. Now let's take a look at what I'm doing here. So I've given our agent just a little bit more instruction. For one, instead of just giving me a link, I actually want to display the image in line. So I'm telling it, use Markdown and display images in line for your response. And then I'm being explicit. I'm telling it, hey, here's an example of what this looks like, but I want you to only use the number. And then I'm also telling it to use a default of model 5000 unless asked otherwise. So now let's go back to our playground. I'm going to copy that, but I'm going to wipe out our session so it doesn't have memory. Let's try this again. Let's see what happens. Okay. Uh-oh. Oh, it's going to make me a liar. Is it making me a liar? It made me a liar. Awesome.
Let's
It's
see.
always fun when things are real, right? Yeah, it totally made me a liar. So let's do that again. Why did you make me a liar?
Yeah, he's trying.
Oh, I didn't save. That's why it made me a liar. I apparently didn't save it. Oops. That's why it made me a liar. Okay, good. I was a little surprised there for a second.
You weren't caught. Don't worry, David.
Yeah, right.
Get away with this one.
Oh, darn it. No. Okay, let's make sure you save when you're doing a live stream.
There you go. Finish editing.
There we go. Yeah, I totally forgot. Let's try that again. All right, my bad. Now the suspense is like ratcheted up, right?
I know, right?
I'm not giving up yet, Logesh. I saw your comment. I'm not. Let's see. Oh yeah, I can tell it's doing it now because it'll take a second for EverArt to do the thing. Actually, we can look. There it is. Beautiful. Yep. So now what did it do? One, it used the correct model, right? For one, it used it in the right format. It also displayed it inline, right? So now I can like change the output, the expected output, right, of what this thing is doing. And so why does that matter? Well, again, if I'm going to come down to say something like cursor or whatever, let's go ahead. I'm just going to turn this one on. Now I've already got the EverArt one here. That's going to be the original one that I made, the image generator, right? Now notice, by the way, do you see the simple agent one? So that is by default enabled. So I'm just going to turn that off because I don't want it, right? I just want the image generator. It doesn't matter. Both of them would work, but there we go. That's that fine control I was talking about before. Right now I can say, just give me this one. And now I can come over here and I can say, create, what should we create an image of? What do you think? What should be our image this time?
Let's see. I don't know. My first thought said tree, maybe like of a tree dancing. I don't know.
A dancing tree?
Yeah,
okay.
Let's see.
Why not? Okay. Now let's see.
Oh, like I said, bonsai tree kind of late. Maybe.
Oh, well, no, give me some. I'll put them in, right? But you see, notice it's calling image generator, right? Now, I haven't done this with DeepSeek before, so I'm super curious to see how well DeepSeek handles this, right? So let's see what it does.
Yeah, and that's an interesting thing to call out, actually, David. You've been working with so many of these different MCP clients, and you notice how each of them kind of use the Langflow MCP tools a bit differently and how they handle them.
Now, check this out. Notice what DeepSeek did when we said generate an image of a dancing tree. Notice what it converted that into. So this is model specific, right? And now we have our image with a dancing tree, right? And now you might ask about the inline thing. Will it display Markdown? You can actually tell that it did respond with Markdown if you take a look, but not all of the MCP clients will do this. One of the things I'm super, super excited about, by the way, is that Warp Core, right? They just added Kitty image support to Warp. So that means you can actually display image. I've been playing with that, but anyways, that's totally separate thing. But like if you're in Quad or Cursor or whatever, now at this level here, right, in my client, I do not need to worry about these particular details. I don't have to worry whether or not DeepSeek will understand how to do this, or OpenAI will, because my tool here, my flow that has become a tool, is handling that part for me. And so now it makes it a bit more universal from that standpoint.
Right. We have the control of those configurations within the agents that we are building within Langflow.
Yes. Right. And I'll take that. I take Lagesh's suggestion there, and we'll do that real quick. So anyway, so while that's doing that, that'll take just a second. One final thing I want to show here, and I did see some questions around Langflow Desktop. I do have that up. So Langflow Desktop, yes, it does in fact have support for 1.4. There is a new version. So all of the things, I can't really zoom this in, unfortunately. The desktop version doesn't zoom in quite the same way. Oh, here's our bonsai tree. Oh, that's nice, actually. And I can tell it's using model 5000. Yeah, it's because I told it to. But yes, if you get the latest desktop version of 1.4, it does have all of the same support that we've talked about today. One of the key things, though, is right here. I know it's a little small. It's hard to see, but there is a specified port 7868 for the desktop. You can use the same kind of config. So you'll see that I also have my Wordle, my if Wordle desktop here. I've got the same kind of thing going on. So that will evaluate and connect just the same. So if you want like the quickest, easiest path, you don't have to worry about installing or anything like that. Just pull the desktop. You have, again, full MCP support for every one of your projects. And now all of those are fully configurable just like you would in the OSS version.
Totally. And for folks like Iobami who are using Windows at the moment,
Yeah.
so I found out that Iobami was using langflow.datastacks.com, which is kind of
Ah,
like our cloud hosted version. That version is not currently on 1.4.
that's right.
So I would definitely point you to, which I did, is pointing him to using UV pip install just straight from our GitHub. And for desktop folks, yes, we have the Mac version out at the moment. We are actively working on a Windows version. So for folks like Ayobami who are on Windows, just hold on to your seats. We're working on something like we're working on that soon. And Mohammed a little bit earlier said, can you touch a little bit more about future plans for Langflow and what new features? We definitely want to keep building out our MCP support for sure.
Yeah.
So all of these new changes that you're seeing, just further integrating, further empowering how we are using MCP, whether you're using it from the client side like Cursor, or you want to build out your own MCP servers, just further kind of bridging that gap between the two and giving you powers on building your MCP servers, your agents. We have things touching a little bit on E2A. I know conversations like that have come up in the past, so keep up with us on our blog as we release more things as they come out.
Awesome. And I was just kind of looking through some of the chatter in the chat there and some of the questions and everything. For those of you who are working, I see a couple questions around like MCP tools and
Hmm.
how to configure them. There's something we were just doing a second ago when we were doing the EverArt piece, right? This is one of the areas where as cool as MCP is, right? I think this is actually honestly a game changer. The challenge, it's still maturing, and there are still some rough edges, right? You'll find that like this npx command is actually being run locally, right? You'll notice that when when you expose your MCP server, it's actually an SSE endpoint, right? It's this SSE endpoint here that you're hitting. There are multiple ways to do this, and depending on which one you're hitting, like I have done a ton with UVX and MPX and had great success with those, but I find the Docker ones sometimes, and these are the MCP tools themselves, are a little bit wanting. And I think we're just watching again the maturity. We're just not there yet, right? And this is like for MCP itself, but it is getting significantly better very very quickly. My take to you, I saw a couple questions like, hey, I'm having a hard time connecting to such and such component. If you're not already aware of it, there is a great tool out there that you should know about called MCP Inspector. Inspector. It is also from our friends at Anthropic. I'm going to drop this here for you. Use this if you're not using it already, because if you're having a hard time with a particular tool, you can use the inspector to get bare bones with it and really kind of like look at where maybe things are going wrong. Because once you get the pattern down, then it's pretty easy to do it. But there's no guarantee that for a particular MCP server or component or whatever, that whatever they have in their Docker, whatever, is exactly what is actually being exposed. So MCP Inspector allows you to, hence the name, inspect all of those things. And once you have it right there, then you should be able to just take that and pop it in one of these if you need to, right? I use that as like a secondary. I'll usually start here, and if for some reason I run into some issue, I can go check it out there. Okay, and I'm just looking at any other questions, any other things we need to address here, Melissa?
Yeah, we have a few more minutes. So
Yeah.
if there are any other new questions, feel free to drop those in the last few minutes that we have. Harsh is asking, can I get the latest update on Windows Desktop through the Docker image? The desktop install package itself should already have the latest update. So you might have to just reinstall the application one more time, Harsh. Okay. Will the replay be available? Yes,
Yes.
Stephanie, it definitely will. We will have an email sent out with all of the resources, links, and things that we've shared today, as well as the recording of the session. So do not worry if you came in a bit late.
Oh, yeah, and Vinal, if you have an external library dependency, right, and if you're doing that in one of your Langflow flows, matter of fact, I had this recently. I built an email and AI agent interface, and I was using SendGrid, and I had a dependency on the SendGrid library. You just need to install that dependency wherever your Langflow is, right? So hopefully, let's see here. Oh, you're using the desktop, and you're a Mac user now. Okay, I'm sorry, I missed that part. That is, I cannot answer that question. I don't know off the top of my head how they're handling the dependency resolution for the desktop. That's actually a really great question to ask on the Discord channel and give them feedback about that.
Hmm.
So yeah, sorry, I don't actually have a good answer for you on that one. Let's see. Any other tools you might enjoy using or you might
Hmm.
not have heard of?
Um,
Yeah, I mean, what do you have, Melissa? Go for it.
Yeah, I'm building like a fashion recommendation system where you can like it's basically a search engine enhanced specifically for fashion. And I've been finding Tavily AI really helpful.
Yeah,
It's a component within Langflow. I've used it as a tool. Yep, David's throwing it up right there. So Tavily Search API, it's basically an AI enhanced search engine. So if I want to search like tennis shoes that are pink, size 8. It'll use that as the search query. It'll kind of enhance it a little bit, search the internet, and then return everything back in kind of this JSON format with links and all the metadata that are needed. And then you can do whatever you want with that response.
yeah.
So flip that into tool mode, hook it up to your agent, and you can try it as well. So that's something that I've been using. How about
Yeah,
you,
I do
David?
like that one. And I see a question here by Enmo. Can we use Composio MCP servers?
Mm,
So the answer generally is yes. Like that to me is what MCP does for everybody. If there is a service out there or some platform that exposes an MCP endpoint that they publish and say, "Hey, here's this," you should theoretically be able to put any of them in here. I mean, if you go back to that list, right? Like, oops, one over. Oh, that's the inspector. Sorry. Yeah, if we go back over to our list here, um, yeah, all of these, right? They use this universal interface. So whether you're using MPX or UVX or something, you should be able to plug them in to this MCP connection component. So the answer should be yes, right? Funny enough, since we work with Composio pretty close, they have components that are built for us. Um, I haven't myself like looked at Composio MCP, so I'd be really interesting to see what the difference is.
yeah,
But yeah, there's nothing that should stop you from that, really.
for sure. Yep, MCP is the rest for the agents era. I love that.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. That. Oh, I'm stealing that, Lagesh.
Yeah,
Can I steal
definitely
that?
heard
Can you
that
steal that?
too. Yeah.
I'm totally stealing that.
Yeah, I hope you didn't trademark that or anything
Yeah,
like that. But I love the USB-C hub
yeah,
analogy as well because it's super true, right? You don't care what's on the other end of your USB-C as long as you know that it has a USB-C connector or adapter. Just hook it up to your laptop. It could be an HDMI cable, it
yeah,
could be your hard drive, it could be your microphone. As long as you know, hey, it's USB-C compatible, I can use it. Similar to MCP servers, right? I don't care what's going on and how it connects or with the mechanisms or how it's set up. All I know is that if I drop in this, similar to what David was showing with that MCP server command, it will work and I have the access to whatever tools that it's giving me. Right. So that is, and you saying it's the rest for the agents era is also a really great way to
yeah.
describe it as well.
Yeah, I really like that. All right, well, it looks like we are about at time here, and as usual, thank you everybody for joining us today. All your wonderful questions. Again, if you haven't joined the Discord, go join the Discord because, like, especially for some of you who have some of these like deeper questions, a little harder to answer right here in the live stream sometimes. Go drop there. There are channels for that. Call us out, right, and ask those questions there.
Yeah, both David
Exactly.
and I are in there.
Yeah.
So you can definitely add us too if you have
Yeah.
specific questions from the live stream that come up. We're both in the channels. So we're here to help you all and have conversations with you. And also, the Discord is great for any announcements too. As new releases come out, new blog posts, new YouTube videos, anything that is relevant to Langflow or lives all in that Discord channel. So We're super excited again to share with you all the updates with 1.4. Of course, new things will be coming out in the future, so keep up with us. And we hope to see you in the next one. Thank you guys. Have
Awesome.
a
Thank you.
great
Take care.